Hello, hello. All right. So, methods and results. This week, you have a couple of things due, and they're kind of the methods and results. I don't actually need the full methods section this weekend. Specifically, what I need is the data analysis section. And so we will go over that today, and we'll also look at an example, a student example of what I'm looking for. Okay. Um, and so, as we've talked about before, we're doing the IMRaDR for our class, but the genre is called IMRAD. We're adding the R for our class. It stands for Introduction, Methods, Results. That little A stands for and then D is discussion. Okay. Um, And remember that each section is basically its own genre. Each one has its own different requirements. And so we're going to go over each one. I'm going to explain what is required in each of the sections. Now, it starts with introduction, then goes to methods, then results, then discussion. And so you might ask, well, why are we turning in the methods and results first? Why not the introduction first? Well, this is actually how you write IMRAD research report. And so it's one of the important things to learn when when you're in this class is the introduction actually is what you write last, because what you want to do first is secondary research, and then you want to do primary research, right? And once you do that primary research, that is your methods. Your primary research is your methods, usually. And so, well, then you have got you've got your primary research done. So why not write your methods then? And then you figure out your results from doing your methods. And so you write those results down. And the results section should hold only the results of your research, no analysis, no kind of what does this mean, right? But then the discussion section, the last section, is the analysis section. That is the what does the data mean from the results section. And so it kind of makes sense on how you would first come up with what do I want to do? You do it, then this is what I did, the results, and this is what it means, the discussion. And then once you have an understanding of all of that, then you know how to write the introduction of what am I doing here, and it makes it much easier to write the introduction. Okay, so a lot of people will tell you that the methods section is so that scientists can reproduce each other's work, right? That's how kind of our scientific process works. And the scientific method works is we're all constantly, hopefully, testing various people's hypotheses and various people's research to make sure that it is founded on science, that it's not just a discrepancy or there's a reason why they got that specific result, right? That has been true and is true for some people. But if you think about it, and this is what our textbook explains, the Scientist's Guide to Writing. Hopefully, you guys read the chapters required and on these sections. Our author mentions the idea that actually a really really small portion of people end up um, trying to replicate your results out of all the people that read it. So say you do some research, say you publish it, the amount of people that actually read through your research um, that want to replicate your results is probably less than 1% of the total readership, right? Most people aren't going to read it. Those that do read it are going to skim through and probably jump right to the discussion section because that's where all the analysis is. We usually skip to the discussion section. Um, and so what our author argues that the method section today exists for these three reasons: to establish your credibility as a researcher. So showing that you have an actual methodology shows that you have credibility. If you say student stress is a problem and the solution is reading week, but we don't see that you have any kind of methodology, we might not actually believe you as a credible researcher because we might think, Maybe it's just their idea that they like, right? Um, this establishes the plausibility of your research and the sequence of investigative steps. So that just shows us how you got the results that you got, because most people jump right to the discussion section and for the analysis. So let's say your research gets published, they're going to read maybe your title. If they like your title, they'll read your abstract. If they like your abstract, they'll probably jump to your discussion section. But let's say they are like, I don't quite understand I don't quite know if I really believe what you said there. And so what they'll do is they'll jump back to the results section to see the results of your research. And if at that point they're like, well, I don't know if I really kind of believe that they, did the right method to get these results, they'll jump back to the method section. And so that this will, and then they'll read through that and they'll be like, oh, okay, I see that they used this methodology, which is an important methodology in our discipline, in our field, or, depending on what field you're in. And so it helps with your credibility and it helps with your plausibility of your research. Okay. There are a couple of challenges with the methods section. Those are organization and level of detail. And these are specific to new writers of the IMRAD as well as seasoned writers. Okay. So what should go in the methods section? Now, some of these things will go in the methods section. This weekend, as I said before, I'm only wanting certain things out of the methods, not everything. Okay. So I'll explain later. But basically, we need your primary research methods here. Okay. This is where you're going to explain this is what I did. This is how many participants I had. These are the survey. We did a survey for this reason. This was our data analysis, problem solving model, decision matrix, triangulation. This is where we mentioned that we did research ethically. We might mention briefly who we surveyed, what population of people, things like that. Okay, so this is the type of content that we will include. And it does depend, obviously, on what methods you're using. If you're using if you're using certain softwares, you might want to mention that. If you're using certain websites like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, if you're using certain tools like a microscope, obviously for our class, we probably won't do that. But that could be a thing that you would include there as well. Now, this is the tough part with new readers, as our textbook describes, is that, or new writers, excuse me, is they tend to write too much information. Because we're not writing for people to be able to replicate our research. If someone wants to replicate our research, they'll hopefully contact you via email. And so you want to include enough information to show your plausibility as a researcher, to show your ethos and your credibility. Sorry, I got an itchy nose today. Allergies. So you want to have enough detail, but don't include too much detail. Okay, I don't need to know exact. I don't need to know every demographic about the people that you surveyed. For example, I don't need you to tell me every survey question you asked. In fact, you can include the survey or interview questions that you did for your primary research in an appendix, and you can reference that appendix as needed throughout the entire research report. Okay. All right. So the organization is up to you. There are different ways of organizing it. Scientist Guide to Writing says this method works. You can be separated by experiments if you're doing different experiments. A lot of people will break it up kind of in like a method like this of materials, subject, design, procedures. You could break it up by tasks as shown in our textbook, Technical Communication. I do ask that we have a section, I need to add this here, called data analysis. However, it doesn't have to be called that, but I do need this section to be included. I'll explain what that is in a minute. Format. So we are writing in either APA style or IEEE style. And so both styles I have references and information to both styles on our Moodle at the very beginning at the top of the page. And so you can reference those there. As There's a lot of information, I know. As I told you, each section is like its own genre, okay? So with language, in the method section specifically, we write often in passive voice past tense, okay? Um, so you're going to write it as if it already happened, okay? Because when it's published, right, it already did happen. And so you're going to be writing it in the past tense, even if you are writing it before you actually finished your research. You can still write it in the past tense. Just make sure you go through it again after you've officially done the research to make sure you didn't say anything incorrect, okay? And the reason why we write in passive voice here, because a lot of times, most of the time, you're going to be told to write in active voice, because we usually prefer active voice in writing. But what this does is it puts um, the focus away from the subject and onto the research itself, right? So instead of, we determined the presence of larvae, the presence of larvae was determined, right? Instead of, we tested the water was tested, whatever, continuing on. And so we want to write in that format. Now, does every single sentence 100% always have to be passive, past tense in the methods? No, not always. Okay. For our class, we're going to be writing in the past tense. Sometimes they ask, certain disciplines will ask you to write an active voice in this section. But most of the time we're going to be writing in past tense. If it's a general statement or a statement that's true, or when you're referring to figures or tables, you'll use present tense still. Okay. All right. So I'm going to end this video here because we're going to jump into the results section next. And then we'll have a third video on, the example that we'll look at, and then a fourth video on ethical graphics. Okay. Thanks, guys.